Good afternoon. I would like to report criminal activity. My name is Jason Ranieri. I am a graduate of Worcester State University, class of 2000, and was freshman class president in 1993. I graduated cum laude in my major history. I became a certified Massachusetts educator by passing the Mass Educators exam with a perfect score in economics. I'm a Heroes Among Us Award recipient 2002 from the Boston Celtics organization for playing Santa Claus for the physically and mentally challenged at Rentham Developmental Center for over 20 years. I'm a graduate of the Massachusetts Leadership Academy 2004 and a member of Empower, a lobbyist group that successfully reinstated Mass Health coverage of eye and dental exams for those in need through the Mass House and Senate. I was a TV editor for WPRI 12, 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. news, Providence, Rhode Island, and also Fox 64, 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. news, Providence, Rhode Island. I enlisted in the U.S. Army ROTC program in 1995 and was awarded a Department of Defense ID badge. I wrote the poetry book The Good Old World. My second book, Polka Dots and Politics, Political Satire, was a finalist in 3 categories: humor, comedy, and political thriller for the 2019 Best Book Awards and 2019 American Fiction Awards. I wrote the book New World Order, Anything But Orderly and Other Reasoning. The book was the 2022 finalist for the American Writing Awards. I composed a self-titled debut CD. I'm a vegetarian and Freemason. I traveled America for a year and a half. I would like now to begin. I wanted to give my credentials so that you could see that I'm a man of substance and I have accomplishments and I'm a good person, as you can tell. Let's begin. Matt Odebashian, Mike Odebashian, Joel Plant, and Dan Schroeder of Bellingham, formerly of Bellingham, Massachusetts. I think Matt Odebashian lives in Blackstone, Mass. Mike Odebashian lives in Los Angeles, California. Joel Plant lives in North Lake Tahoe, California. And Dan Schroeder, I think he lives in Atlanta, Georgia. They dosed me and others at Bellingham High School from 1990 to 1993. It was so insane how hard everyone was tripping in our school for like 2 or 3 years when the Odebashians and these other people, Joel Plant and Dan Schroeder, Ellen Mackey, decided they were going to dose people just to see how they would react. Just as a social experiment. We're going to experiment on you by dosing you with acid. And they did this to many, many people at Bellingham High School, Bellingham, Massachusetts. In college, Renee Holmes and Ellen Mackey shit on my face and leave me almost dead. Attempted homicide. No charges were placed by my family. They denied it ever happened. For years, I had acne as a result. Both blame me. Renee Holmes and Ellen Mackey blame me for Mike Dabowski, now of Hudson, Florida, going to jail for 8 years for dealing LSD. Dan and Sue Ranieri, my parents, do nothing. Dan actually laughs in my face about it with the rest of the Ranieri brothers. He tells me, "Take your meds, Jace, or I'm calling 911. Even though the psychiatric drugs make me sick physically and mentally. The more drugs that I'm on, the less likely I am to report the abuse, report the crimes. Because I cannot think properly when I'm on a synthetic chemical that is more dangerous than you ever imagined. I never once agreed to see a psychiatrist or be on psychiatric drugs, but they have made my life a living hell." Dan Ranieri used to pull my pants down and hit me with a leather belt. And his wife Sue would abuse me physically and sexually. Also, she zipped my penis in my zipper and walked out of my bedroom. She would dig her nails into my arm, pull my hair, and tell me I belonged in an orphanage. I was left at home for long periods of time with no supervision. They also drugged me with drugs that Dan's brother Kevin Raniere discovered by being a detective narc on the Bellingham Police Department. Kevin Raniere admitted more than once to me about Doreen Pickard. He said, "Yeah, I did it. What's the kid gonna do?" He was drunk on 17 beers, at least. I'm saying an estimate. I'm not saying it was 17. I'm just saying he was liquored up. He said, "Yeah, I did it. What's the kid going to do?" My brother Dan turned, laughed, and walked away. They were both drunk. It was at a family party when he first admitted it. I was an eyewitness to the crime. Kevin Raniere broke into my apartment in Milford, Mass., abused and threatened me to keep my mouth shut. I said to him that night, "You murdered Doreen Pickard." Kevin said, "So what if I did?" I told Ron Pickard, the Milford police chief, that Kevin broke in. The Milford police chief was fired. I told Senator Moore. Senator Moore lost his next election. Even though he was a 20-year incumbent and had just rebuilt Main Street. I told the FBI, Blackstone police chief, and others. Nothing was ever investigated. Nothing, no arrests were ever made. The Blackstone police chief said, "Not our problem, it's Woonsocket's problem." They're all very friendly with Kevin. They all used to go on crack cocaine bus in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, even though they're from Massachusetts, and they would steal. Ernie Taft, who was the dispatcher, said that there were evidence break-ins, like, throughout the time, and they would steal the crack, and then other cops and Kevin would go to his bar in his basement, and they would smoke crack, and they would drink alcohol. Sue Raniere told me at 8 years old. So they were all very friendly with Kevin, so nothing was ever done. They just want to cover it up. Maybe Kevin has dirt on him, and they don't want to make it a big deal. But anyway, when I was 6 years old, I was with my 9-year-old cousin, Kevin Poisson, Poisson. I said, "Kevin, my mother's sexually and physically abusing you." He went upstairs and asked Sue Raniere if that was true. She drugged him with a whole bunch of microdots. He came at me with a hammer. I threw a chair through a glass door, took a piece of glass, held it to his chest. He was still under hypnosis, and kicked him onto the steps. The glass penetrated the 9-year-old boy's heart, and he died because he was about to hit me on the head with a hammer. I never wanted to admit that to anybody, but when the police showed up, there was Kevin saying, "We think that he ran through the glass door," because I told him, I said, "Mom, my mother drugged him. My mother drugged him, Kevin." "Jason, just calm down." And Kevin was part of the detail that did the investigation, even though he was from Bellingham, Massachusetts. And this happened in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. So Kevin Poisson died at my hands after self-defense when he tried to hit me on the head with a hammer after Sue drugged him through hypnosis. I told his father. His father divorced his wife because she didn't want to do anything about it. She just didn't care. Sue was her sister. I guess she really didn't care that her son was dead because, in the end, they knew. I told them all. At 8 years old, Sue Raniere tells me, "Put chemicals stored in a nail polish bottle on Bob Purich's door," because his daughters were making fun of me on the school bus, and I came home crying. Sue gave me a glass fingernail polish bottle filled with some type of substance that you could put on, like, doorknobs. So I did what she told me. She hypnotized me to do it. I could not resist. I was tripping so hard that I went into Bob Purich's house. He was on the phone with somebody, and I left. I told him what his daughters did. I put the chemical on his door. I was 8 years old, and Sue hypnotized me to do it. I was tripping, and he was tripping when he touched the chemical. He went into he lit a cigarette near a gas can in his shed and burned alive. Dick Ranieri did the investigation. Nothing was done. Sue told Kevin, follow him around and see who he's been talking to, or I will tell everyone you're an alcoholic, drug-using cop. Sue and Dan put my dog to sleep. I read in the Woonsocket Call a dog being given away at Doreen Pickard's house. Kevin followed me there and came as I circled the ad in the Woonsocket Call and left it in the living room so they knew where I was. So Kevin showed up and he walked inside her house, and Doreen said, "You need a search warrant." She tried to stop him. A fight broke out, and he bludgeoned her with a lead pipe. I asked Ron Pickard if his daughter had a dog to give away. He said no, but her roommate did. And I was waiting for her roommate to arrive. She was at work, and I would have ended up with a new dog. However, Doreen was murdered. Kevin also showed up to the crime scene, even though he was from Bellingham, Massachusetts, and the crime happened in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Beaver Tempest, Gordon Tempest, who I called the FBI 5 different times after Kevin confessed, and my memory started coming back about what happened. They finally released Gordon Tempest. They had framed him. Kevin and the Woonsocket police framed him, or someone framed him. They arrested him. The car that they claimed was at the scene of the crime, he hadn't even owned until years and years later. The crime wasn't solved for like 15 years. It went unsolved. Beaver Tempest is now a free man. He was doing a life sentence. He did 38, I think he did like over 38 years, or a bunch of time in prison, in a federal prison. Never once said he was guilty. Always maintained his innocence. He's finally been released, but thanks to my efforts. I told Sue Ranieri my freshman year wait a minute. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. I told Sue Ranieri my freshman year in college. I knew after Ellen Mackey and Renee Holmes shit on me and almost murdered me at Dowden Hall in 1993. Your department may remember that. They attempted to murder me for putting Mike Dubofsky in jail. They shit on my face. It was the most humiliating thing you could ever imagine. I was freshman class president. I had everything going for me, all over a local drug dealer. So I told Sue Ranieri my freshman year in college I knew what her and Kevin did. All of a sudden, I'm dosed with acid on a regular basis in my food, on my pillow. And Dan is screaming at me. Sue is screaming at me. I'm declared mentally ill, and they start aggressively mentally tormenting me. Dan would say, "Take your meds, Jace, or I'm calling 911. This goes on for over 20 years. The meds are dangerous and cause me all kinds of mental and physical abnormalities. I can no longer hold a job. I can't balance my checkbook, and Dan begins opening my mail and handling my phone calls. Sue tells my friends like Chad Trudeau that I'm not home. Even when I am, I now have no one in my life. Renee Holmes and Jeff Holmes of Uxbridge, Mass. Start robbing me of my money when I worked at Stop and Shop, 9th grade to 12th grade. Dan and Sue Ranieri deny it was happening. She used to steal my paper route money when I was 9 years old. I got that job after the murders because I hoped to save money to move out, and though I was just a child. I had about 50 to 100 customers in Wrentham Manor. My customers would leave me $1 tip each week, about $50 to $100 a week, about $200 to $400 a month. Nothing to show for it. Sue stole it each week. In 1993-94, I found the Milliken condo for sale in Franklin, Massachusetts, about $33,000. I was working and I was hoping to buy it. Dan screamed at me every time I brought it up. His wife and him bought it sold it for $110,000, making $80,000 in 7 years. I was drugged and never stood a chance. I lost my memory and was told to forget about it. I now have no place that I can call my own. I've been living in group homes and mental hospitals for the last 25 years, 30 years, 25 years about. And anyway, I went to Worcester State College and had a military ID badge. Sue found out and stole it from me. Again, they drugged me. I had no memory of ever having one until years later. I got another job at the Mass Turnpike. Renee Holmes and Jeff Holmes of Uxbridge, Massachusetts, and Millville, across from Potbelly Pub, is where Renee Holmes lives. And Jeff Holmes lives in Uxbridge. Steal almost $800 from me in my bi-weekly check. Every other week, I have no money, but can never remember how I spent it. I am forced to borrow $20 here and there from Dan for gas. I no longer have the ability to pay my credit card. Dan screams at me nightly, denies I'm being robbed. Renee Holmes and Jeff Holmes are deadheads. Renee Holmes is a 9th grade dropout who got her GED and was fired from the Franklin Police Department. They are in a gang and threaten me, especially Renee, who years later, when I was living in Natick, Mass., showed up at the Natick psych ward after the SWAT team was called on me because Dan and Sue broke into my apartment at 11 p.m. to, quote, check on me, unquote. I was in bed sleeping. I believe they were going to dose the drinks in my fridge. I forced them out. I was arrested and charged with assault and battery by Natick police. Renee Holmes showed up at the hospital in Natick, though she is from Uxbridge, a great distance away. Renee said her husband Jeff divorced her and she needed a place to stay. I was completely tabula rasa, blank slate. I had no memory of them or what they did to me prior. We moved to Jefferson Hills, Framingham, Mass. She would drug me, threaten me, and steal money out of my mailbox, $60 a week. Each time I would have memory loss. One night, I remembered something about a girl she hated because I introduced her to Renee. Renee and Jeff Holmes were at the Franklin Ice Rink, and me and Nancy Forrestal showed up. Nancy was like 21, I was 16, but we lived in the same neighborhood when we grew up together at 40 Payne Street. Nancy asked if I could introduce her to some people in Franklin because I was so popular, because I worked for 4 years at Stop and Shop in Franklin. Everybody knew who I was. So when Jeff saw Nancy was good looking, he drugged her and they started flirting with her. Renee saw this from across the room and went insane. When we left, we didn't even skate. We got so drugged and dosed and hypnotized that we went there and we just walked out. We were only there for about 25 minutes. So, her name was Nancy Forrestal. She died in a car crash. I said to Renee, whatever happened between you and Nancy? She said Nancy was a witch and trying to steal my husband, even though they weren't married yet. Nancy was in a car accident. A couple of nights went by and Renee hypnotized my mind into driving her gray Lincoln Town Car. I drove it. I had no license. I found myself behind the wheel and the brakes let go. Renee had emptied the master cylinder where the brake fluid was, and the car stopped in a parking lot. No damage to the car, and the police weren't called. I believe Renee did the same thing to Nancy's car. At Patriots Bar and Grill, Renee, after drinking all night, attacked me viciously, and the Bellingham police were called. She said, "You better shut your mouth." She kicked a police officer and charges were brought against her. I started living in Blackstone, Mass., and this guy, Scott, showed up. This other kid, Nick, showed up, claiming that they knew these people, that they knew the Odebashians. But I ended up, it was pretty minor with that. I got rid of them. I live alone on Social Security disability in a Hissel house at 142 Burncoat Street, Worcester, Massachusetts. I haven't driven a car in over 20 years. I have no, 10 or 15 years maybe. I have no alarm. They're going to be moving me out of this place soon, and I'll be vulnerable. I am microchipped as I have scarring on both my earlobes. I hear voices not in my head, but in my ears. And it is Renee and Kevin, Dan and Sue I hear. When I went to Jeff Holmes' house, when Renee was stealing money from me in Framingham, she showed me his hidden room. He had a radio receiver in there in his hidden room. Meaning that they microchip people and they listen in on people and can talk to people through microchips. They are into the anarchy. They're into the anarchist cookbook. Jeff Holmes knows how to make pipe bombs. He's got guns. He's got weapons. He's got a bow and arrow. He hunts. He's violent. He's a drunk. He smokes crack. He smokes weed. He does all kinds of drugs. He was having sex with Renee Holmes when she was 14 years old and he was 19. So you can imagine how jealous she must have been of Nancy when he decided to do this to us. I also have a strange gel on my optic nerve, according to my eye doctor that I visited in Framingham, Mass. When I did live at 5 Reservoir Drive, Bellingham, Mass, Sue Ranieri told me a married surgeon couple needed their baby to be watched while they worked. I reluctantly went to the last house on the right of Reservoir Drive and was welcomed in. Soon after, the male doctor came home and said I was sleeping with his wife, which I was not doing. I just wanted to babysit. He said I will never receive medical treatment in Massachusetts again. They brought me to a hospital at one point. I was in a hospital. The surgeons cut the shaft of my penis and left lines of scar tissue, which I can prove because there's scar tissue on my penis. They also caused trenches from my cheeks to my jaw. When I smiled, the doctors could have microchipped me, or maybe it was Kevin or Renee, or placed a nano camera on my optic nerve. Both work at Natick Hospital and Framingham Union. I told police officers B.J. Voss, Tim Buskirk, Bellingham, Mass., and Victor, Bellingham, Mass., about the murder of Doreen Pickard. All are now dead. B.J. Voss was under 35. How could a perfectly healthy police officer die of a heart attack at such a young age? He was my sister's former husband's brother, and I told him that Kevin murdered Doreen Pickard. But if Kevin has a radio room and can hear what I'm saying, he would have played back his tape that he tapes from his radio room and known I had told B.J. Voss. Tim Buskirk lived next door to Dan and Sue and came in their house to check on me. He came in their house to check. He found me in a foul-smelling bedroom, passed out for over 2 weeks, drugged. He is now dead, and his house at Reservoir Drive was burned. So he could no longer be Dan's neighbor because he was investigating. I told Victor at the BPD station, Bellingham Police Department station, about the crime, and he is now dead. The murder of Kevin Pussah and Bob Purich by Sue Ranieri, and the murder of Doreen Pickard by Kevin Ranieri and possibly others, happened. The only proof I have is Doreen Pickard. Happened in 1982. That was Bob and Doreen. I think in 1980, it was Kevin Pussah, because I was 6 years old. That's when Kevin Pussah had I stabbed the glass to his head after killing him because he was about to kill me with a hammer. But the crime scene said that he ran through a glass door, but there was no blood on the other side of the glass door. There was no blood on the on the patio where he supposedly ran through. And I don't think someone running through a glass door, the glass would never penetrate his heart. He would have to run so fast through a glass door. But that's what Kevin said happened to the Woonsocket Police Department, and the case was closed. The murder of Nancy Forrestal by Renee Holmes happened when I was in high school. Renee goes by the alias Shannon and is a 9th grade dropout and a fired Franklin police officer. Mike Dobovsky is also a 9th grade dropout. Kevin Ranieri, Sue Ranieri, Ellen Mackey, Dan Raneri have used mind-altering drugs on me and possibly others. They all use mind-altering drugs and on other people. Like I said, Kevin Zanark has a radio room hidden behind the wall next to his basement bar. I caught him in there when I showed up unannounced to ask him if I was going to be murdered too. He is a master at surveillance and probably has cameras in or on more than one house. They all use mind-altering drugs like paralyzing agents, hypnotic chemicals, memory loss drugs, date rape drugs, strychnine, LSD, and mescaline. Renee and Jeff Holmes also have a hidden radio room in their house. As of now, I'm in a Hissel house at 142 Burncoat Street, Worcester, Mass. I want to report this. I would like you to file charges. I would like to press charges against Renee Holmes and Ellen Mackey for shitting on my face and attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, against me when I was a freshman class president in 1993 at Dowden Hall at Worcester State University. You probably remember, if you go back on your records to 93 and 94, you'll find this case. It's got to still be open. Why wouldn't anyone ask me? No police officer ever came up to me from Worcester and said, "Hey, what happened?" I mean, I was brought to UMass Memorial in an ambulance, and they saved my life. I'd like to press charges against both of them. Because Renee Holmes I've been hearing Renee Holmes's voice in the microchips, and the scar tissue in my ear proves it. I have scar tissue in both my ears, my earlobes, and I hear her voice saying, "You fucking," and you can see her. I think they also have microchips that are allowing them to transmit through media. Now, I can't be sure of that. All I know is I had a Department of Defense ID badge, and if I don't get justice from these people, from you guys arresting them for attempted murder on me, Ellen Mackey and Renee Holmes, then I have no other recourse but to take the law into my own hands to defend myself. Because they are definitely going to try to murder me. They know about that I've written a letter. Dan Raneri has come to this house. He brings $100 each week to me because he knows I'm being watched, so he wants to make it look like I'm getting a lot of money. Normally, he would have given me $40 or $60 if I lived on my own. But when he comes here, he doses me. So for 3 days, I trip. Each time I've been hospitalized on a Section 12 by the Worcester Police Department was like a couple of days after he had dropped the money off. Now, I read my biography and my resume and my accolades. How the hell is it possible that I could be arrested over 60 times on a Section 12? I have been arrested 60 times on Section... This is a conspiracy to hide the evidence and discredit me as a witness. So he's mentally ill, he doesn't know what he's saying. My father will say he's very sick. Me and his mother are very concerned. We've been dealing with this for the last 20 years. Kevin didn't murder anybody. Sue didn't murder anybody. The guy is so convincing. He's a politician. He was a former state representative. And the guy is corrupt. He stole 4 to 6 years of my Social Security money. I came home one day, found in the mailbox my check with my name on it. Didn't even know I was receiving one. I'm like 23 years old. I had been 22 or 23. I've been receiving the disability since 18 or 19 years old. I'm working menial jobs while being drugged on psychiatric drugs, and I'm having brain damage. I can't even function. I can't sleep at night. I'm having all kinds of blood abnormalities, and the guy is stealing my disability check from me. Now, this has got to be provable. I think they canceled my disability check on me also, and I had to go again and get disability because I was receiving it from a period of time, then it was canceled. He goes through the Woonsocket Social Security Department on Diamond Hill in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Someone can call them, say, hey, was Jason Ranieri's Social Security disability in like 1992 to like 1997 ever canceled and then reestablished? Because there's no way I would have ever canceled it unless they were trying to say, oh, he never had Social Security, is what they were arguing if I ever reported it. So I'd like to press charges, again, through your department, and I'm going to name the people, because I don't want to be murdered. I'm an award-winning author. I also just applied for the Marine Heritage Award, Marine Corps Heritage Foundation Award for a book award. I also applied for the Next Generation Indie Book Award, and I'm in touch with a Hollywood agent to make Polka Dots and Politics into a Hollywood movie. So that's that. Let me name the people that need to have. I'd like to press charges against Renee Holmes and Ellen Mackey. Renee Holmes of Millville, Massachusetts, across from the Potbelly Pub, or Uxbridge. She frequents a bunch of different houses. She's got a number of different cars. Ellen Mackey of Natick, Mass. Now, when I was in Framingham, Renee Holmes stabbed me. I have a stab wound under my arm where she stabbed me. She attempted to stab me to keep me quiet. The Framingham police and a bunch of other people, Dan Ranieri, Mike Dabowski, Ellen Mackey, and Renee Holmes, a kid named Scott, showed up at my Framingham apartment at Jefferson Hills and basically assaulted me because Mike Dabowski has a broken leg for raping a 9-year-old girl. He got hit by a car. Someone hit him with a car. I pushed him in front of a moving car for raping a 9-year-old girl, and I think Ellen Mackey dosed me to do it. Ellen Mackey is dangerous. Renee Holmes is dangerous. They have a way of hypnotizing people. They hypnotized me to do things. They tried to make me get them pregnant. There was a girl named Amy Dolliver who forced herself on me, drugged me with a date rape drug, made me ejaculate into her vagina. I don't know if she was going to try to get me pregnant because she thought I had money. She was a heroin addict that showed up, that was friends with Ellen Mackey. No idea who she was. She came into my house, drugged me, had sex with me. And that's what I don't know if she has a child by me. I have no fucking clue. Ellen Mackey does stuff like this all the time to people. She doses them, hypnotizes them. Dan Ranieri does it. Sue Ranieri does it. Kevin Ranieri does it. My sister, Melissa Voss, my mother, actually drugged us both with a date rape drug. So at 4:30 in the afternoon, Melissa is completely naked in the living room of the parents' house, masturbating. By the time Sue got done dosing my drink, I was naked jerking off next to my stupid sister who was masturbating. I felt so humiliated when the dose ran up. I started sobbing. I sobbed for I must have sobbed for over a minute. And I ran upstairs humiliated. The next day, Sue and Melissa were laughing at me. I then took Melissa, threw her to the ground, and punched her a couple of times in the back. And then they had me arrested and brought to a mental hospital. I'm sure they told the Bellingham police about this. Because Kevin would have, when Renee Holmes attacked me at the Patriots Bar and Grill, Doug Houston, a Bellingham cop, refused to let me press charges. Because Kevin and him are drinking buddies. Rich Numella of the Bellingham Police Department, drinking buddy of Kevin, drug user probably. Brian Higgins, Bellingham Police Department, drunk, drinks on duty, probably, like Kevin does. The police chief, Ross, I think his name's Rolls, Officer Rolls. I think he has a problem with alcohol and other stuff. They are all in it on together to do anything that Kevin and Dan says because Kevin and Dan have dirt on the entire department. So, please press charges against Renee Holmes and Ellen Mackey for attempted murder against me in 1993 when they defecated on my face and almost murdered me. I think you guys can stop there. Dan and Sue Ranieri, please press charges against them. Otherwise, I'm going to be murdered, and I have so much potential, it's not even funny. It would be a tragedy if I was murdered by these people without them going to jail before they get a chance to do it. Renee Holmes has been stalking me since I was 16 years old. She is the one who they want to... They're all in on it. Kevin has talked to Renee Holmes. Renee Holmes is a former cop. Renee wants to murder me to get money from the Ranieri family after the murder is done. Then they'll probably move to L.A. with Mike Odabashian and his band Zender Black. And they'll probably live out there, or maybe they'll stay local, but who's going to report me being murdered when my family doesn't give two shits because they murdered people? Chief, if the police chief in Worcester, I want to thank you for listening. This has been about 36 minutes of testimony. I'm leaving this because if I am murdered, I hope that you can catch them before they continue to do this to me with my ears ringing. I hear like a sound in my ears, like a high frequency pitch in my ears. I can't sleep at night. My father shows up with my money, drugs me, gets me in trouble. I have a stab wound from Renee Holmes. Somehow I never went to the hospital for it, but there is a scar there. I don't know. I think those Tufts doctors, the ones that cut my genitals, I think they're also in on it. Because I think that was part of what they were going to do to get money from Dan. Because maybe they had gotten fired from a hospital. I don't know. I heard that they used to work at another hospital and they weren't very successful. So anyway, please press charges against the Tufts doctors. They're the last house on the right-hand side of 5 Reservoir Drive, Bellingham, Massachusetts. Last house on the right. If I ever they said I won't receive medical treatment. I have scar tissue on my genitals from when they cut me. The guy said I slept with his wife. I never even did that. I would never do that. That's ridiculous. I wasn't even attracted to her. And so press charges against them. Sue Ranieri and Dan Ranieri and Kevin Ranieri. Mike Dabowski, Matt Odabashian, Joel Plant, and Mike Odabashian. They're all over the country. They continue to drug people and dose them. It's part of how they get by. They're all into music. I don't know what else to do other than to report this. If I'm a murder victim, then at least someone knows. Or if I have to take the law into my own hands, which I'm going to do if they are not arrested, because Renee Holmes has threatened to murder me. She stabbed me. I want her brought to justice, or I have to do something that I have to go to jail for. And it won't be jail. It will be Bridgewater. And I'm telling you guys, this is no joke. She is dangerous. If you approach her in any way, she will stalk you as a cop, and she will hunt you down, and she will kill switch your car, and she will dose you, and you won't know your ass from your elbow for the rest of your life. That's how dangerous these chemicals are that they've been using. Now, Dan Ranieri is coming up tomorrow, so I hope he doesn't drug me this time, but please protect me from these people. I have a lot of potential. I applied for the Worcester Poet Laureate. I've been involved with, I fed the homeless with my friend. We used to go around, driving around. We would feed the homeless. I was freshman class president, and they made an attempt on my life, Renee Holmes and Ellen Mackey. Please arrest them immediately. They're the first people you have to arrest in this. It's obvious that happened because there must have been some kind of report in 1993 that happened at Dowden Hall. Please call me at 774-317-8419. That's 774 317-8419. My email is Jason, period, Ranieri, at mail.com. Chief, I hope you guys can look into this, and please be careful. Kevin is dangerous. If he's murdered BJ Voss like I think he did, and Victor, and did that to Tim Buskirk's house, the guy is homicidal. He must be a 40-year raging alcoholic who owned a cop bar at one point in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. This guy, has been drinks heavily, like a fish, and he has a bar in his basement where the cops all hang out and get drunk. And he has those radio rooms, and so does Jeff Holmes and Renee Holmes. Those radio rooms can track me anywhere, and they know that I'm leaving you this message right now. So I guess my life's in danger. So if I don't hear back from you within a reasonable amount of time, I have no other option than to defend myself. Which means that if she stabbed me and made attempts on my life, then she'll continue to do that. They know that I have court cases. I have a litigation case for $65,000 in the Worcester Superior Court. So if I'm murdered, where does that $65,000 go? Where does my books go? My award-winning books go? Where does my, it all goes to Dan Ranieri, and that's what he wants. So please investigate this. I gave you my number and my name, my email. Thank you so much for hearing me out. You can play this for a lot of different police. I hope that they get geared up to go after these people. Just think of it like this. Police officers in Bellingham may have been murdered. Your fellow fraternal cops. Murdered. Not killed or brought to justice, but murdered. Not in self-defense, but to hide the truth.